Yeah, so hi, my name is Ben. I'm from the University of Dundee. This paper was written as part of my PhD thesis with my supervisor and co-author, David Flatla, and we're developing a mobile application to improve speech reading acquisition. So around the world, 360 million people have some form of a hearing loss. And this can result in communication barriers, which may result in a stagnant career, social isolation, and a decrease in overall life satisfaction. However, some people with a hearing loss find that speech reading, which is commonly called lip reading, can help overcome some of these barriers when communicating with other people. So speech reading is using the visual information about the speaker's the movements of the speaker's lips, teeth, and tongue, together with any residual hearing, along with any conversation context, such as where they are, who the person is, to ultimately improve understanding of what they're saying. However, speech reading is a really difficult skill to master. And this is because lip shapes, which are known as visemes, can produce several speech sounds, which are known as phonemes. And therefore, there's a one-to-many mapping from visemes to phonemes, or lip shapes to speech sounds. So for instance, words like sherry and jerry can sound very different, but if you say them without your voice, such as, they can look very similar. So try it between each other because the room's massive, right? So because of this, people attend speech reading classes, and classes primarily focus on teaching people how to speech read more effectively. However, classes are only provided in a handful of countries around the world, and even when they are, there's just not enough for how many people they have with hearing loss. So in our paper from last year, we actually interviewed speech reading tutors to determine how new technology-based approaches could help. So where does HCI fit into the problem? So we call these tools speech reading acquisition tools. So our paper this year really focuses on how we designed a new SAT to help with speech reading practice outside of classes. So what is there currently? So currently there's a really limited number of SATs that actually support speech reading practice outside of class. And it's really unclear how often these are used by speech readers. So here's two examples. So we have lip reading practice on the right-hand side, and we have lip-reading.org on the left-hand side. They're both websites that offer video-based practice. However, there's a really limited number of speakers on each of them, and a really limited amount of content. So lip reading practice also has no way for you to answer. You just have to watch the videos and look at the captions. There's no real feedback loop going on there. Whereas lip-reading.org does have some form of feedback. So current SATs have a limited selection of content, a limited selection of speakers, but ultimately the user cannot customize the content with the words, phrases, or situations, or even people that they encounter daily. That's what they need to practice with, right? So to begin to address this, we actually conducted a postal questionnaire with speech reading students from around Scotland, so we could begin to understand how students practiced and used speech reading outside of classes. We had 59 participants complete our questionnaire, sourced from 4 speech reading tutors, so around about several classes because each tutor does more than one. They were aged between 45 to 93 years old, and around 76% were female. All of the participants reported to having a hearing loss, and the most common causes of this were due to aging, having it from birth, or viral infection. The majority of the participants had a hearing loss for around 10 years, with some of them having a hearing loss for 20 years plus, so a large range of experience here. 56 participants reported having hearing aids when their hearing loss. 1 used a cochlear implant, and 2 participants state they didn't use any AT at all. So on to the findings. So 50% of our participants had been in classes for over 2 years. However, less than a third of them rated their ability to speech read as good, and nobody rated it excellent. And this really suggests that speech reading practice does need to be improved. Now, what about how they practice? So 66% of participants reported that they do practice at home. However, in our paper last year, our tutors told us that they thought students practiced using techniques from their classes, particularly one called mirror practice, which I'll talk about in a moment. However, our participants reported primarily practicing by using observation, which is just having conversations and watching what someone's saying, and watching television. So we kind of anticipated this was going to happen, so we asked participants to report the frequency of practicing with subtitles turned on and off. However, it was a really mixed response, with some participants reporting never using TV or video to practice speech reading, which does echo what tutors told us last year as well, that captions for practicing lip reading is kind of useless because you have to just watch the captions or look at the face. Now, both observation and television do provide an endless supply of practice material. There's just so much out there, right? You can just have conversations forever. However, when using television and observation, it's really difficult to assess whether you're understanding the speaker correctly. Again, there's no feedback there for you to look at. So what about mirror practice again then? So tutors report that they thought students practice using mirror practice. So mirror practice is when a student speaks into a mirror to look at the visual differences between 2 words. or lip shapes. So we actually asked participants how often they use this outside of class, with most participants reporting a really low frequency of use. So around 17 said never, and then 29 didn't even answer the question, suggesting they didn't use it either. We again anticipated this based on what our tutor said, so we asked them to report their likes and dislikes. So participants responded that they liked that mirror practice allows them to learn lip shapes and compare them with each other. However, it also shows them the visual differences between words. What they disliked was watching themselves in the mirror, that they have full knowledge of what they're saying, so they have too much feedback now, and that they tend to overemphasize words, which makes it much, much harder to speech read. So what about technology usage? So tutors report that they thought students used those SATs, but it turns out they didn't. They didn't really use any technology to practice their speech reading, apart from television, but even then, a pretty limited amount. However, we actually asked participants what their mobile device usage was, and as you can see from this table, it's actually quite high for this type of demographic, which suggests that mobile devices are a really good avenue for developing new speech reading acquisition tools. So we also asked them to report the situations that they encounter that are really challenging when you speech read. And as the last talk just showed, group conversations is actually one of the hardest ones, but also any situation with a large amount of background noise, because that really limits the use of residual hearing. It makes it a lot harder. So on to the challenges that affect speech reading. You can see that the top 4 here, such as people turning away, people talking quickly, people covering their mouths, and quiet speakers, that's difficult for anybody in a conversation. But if you look at the 5th most reported, which is words looking the same on the lips, that can be solved with more practice, because that's that problem of visemes that I talked about at the beginning. So to summarize the questionnaire, current SATs have limited content. TV and observation provide limited feedback. And then mirror practice, well, that provides too much feedback. We used all of these findings to develop a new Android app that we call MirrorMirror that allows speech readers to practice lip shapes and words by recording videos of people they actually talk to in their daily life. So MirrorMirror is also inspired by the likes and dislikes of mirror practice. So it's kind of the next iteration of mirror practice. So I'm just going to go over the main features of the app and then how we evaluated it as well. So we have 3 tabs. So the first tab is the speaker tab, and this shows you a list of speakers that you've added into your library. Then you can go and add new speakers into the library. So these could be your family, your friends, colleagues, co-workers. Then you move on to the library tab, and this shows you a lip shape. So a lip shape is a viseme. So you could have pa, ba, and ma. So that's one viseme category. So any 3 kind of lip shapes that look similar on the lips. And then you can add words into that lip shape, such as pat, bat, mat, and ball are actually all visually pretty much the same. So then you can add new words into that as well. And then once you've done that, you can actually record videos of people saying those specific target words. So for instance, here I would be recording a video of me saying the word ball. So here's kind of how that works. So you can see we choose the word we want to speak, and then we record. Now it locks it into landscape, so all the videos are nice in landscape. We get feedback on what we're saying, and then we can save that into our library and just check that that's the kind of video we want to use. So once you build up a big category of lots of different videos, we can then move on to the practice tab, which is kind of the main point of MirrorMirror. So we have 2 main modes. We have word practice and lip shape practice. I'm not really going to go into word practice. That's just a different way to practice words in succession. We're really going to focus on lip shape practice. So lip shape practice allows you to choose a lip shape and a speaker, or you can choose all lip shapes and all speakers, or the audio on or off. And then you get this kind of view, and it's kind of like a brain training game for speech reading. So for instance, you get different words that you think the target speaker has said, and then you can select them. So it makes more sense with a little bit of a task. So I'm going to choose me, and I'm going to speak for the lip shape PBM, and you kind of got to work out what I'm saying. So once we answer, we then get feedback on what I've said. And again, you can see really just how similar those 2 words are. So how do we evaluate MirrorMirror? So we evaluated it with 3 stages in kind of a case study-based evaluation. So speech reading is really individual on how people learn, so we really want to build up a nice case study of each participant using 3 different stages. So the first was a briefing and tutorial session, then we did an in-the-wild deployment, and then we did a post-deployment discussion session with each of our participants. So we had 3 participants recruited via the tutors who agreed to be part of the first questionnaire study. So the first was P1, he was a male, 74, he had moderate to severe hearing loss. He'd been in classes for a year and rated his ability to speech read as fair. We had P2, who was a female, 54. profound hearing loss for around 2 years in classes, and then her ability to speech read is fair. And then P1 was a male, 74, severe hearing loss, and for 2 years in classes with ability to speech read is good. So we met with each of them and explained the study. They then completed a similar questionnaire to the first one at the start, and then they were giving a tutorial on how to use the app. So then in the second stage, each participant was given the device with MirrorMirror pre-installed, and were asked to use it for around a week. And we asked them to do a number of different tasks in that. And I'm just going to go over kind of the main results of the tasks. So all participants added multiple speakers into their speaker library, which is what we asked them to do. So P1 added 2 speakers, his wife and his son. P2 added 4 speakers, herself, her husband, her daughter, and a colleague. And then P3 added 2 speakers, himself and his wife. So they were asked to add new words into the word library. So P1 added 19, P2 added 18, and then P3 added 36 new words, which is quite a lot. So then all participants added new videos, with P1 adding 19, mostly of his wife. P2 added a staggering 145 videos, which is kind of crazy. We didn't expect that. Around about 36 for each participant, each speaker, sorry. And then P3 added 71 videos, mostly of himself, which was also surprising based on the fact they don't like to watch themselves. However, he liked that disconnect, the fact that the videos weren't live, which is like mirror practice, so they were recorded of him, so it wasn't as awkward for him. So overall, participants made really great use of the lip-shape practice mode, often using it multiple times per day. P1 had 14 sessions with 76 trials. P2 had 72 sessions with 706 trials. And then P3 had 43 sessions with 367 trials. So after the 1 week IndieWild deployment, we met with each participant to discuss MirrorMirror in a questionnaire-based structured interview, which was audio recorded for later transcription. I'm only going to have time to pull out the key points, so do look at the paper for more information. So when asked about his overall impressions of MirrorMirror, P1 said that he thought it was quite easy, straightforward, and quite helpful. He then said it was interesting to be able to try and work out which word was being used. And he continued to say that in classes, they don't tend to practice words that look similar, which you would, think would be what they would practice. They practice the differences between like ball and light, but ball and light look very different, so there's not much point in practicing that. When asked if he'd practiced speech reading with his wife or his family before, he said that he hadn't actually tried that, which is kind of strange considering he needs to speech read them more often. So with MirrorMirror, he could actually practice with his wife. So if his hearing was to degrade further, that would actually be really helpful for him. When asked if he thought it would improve his speech reading, he said that it would because he wasn't practicing enough already, and this would be a nice, easy way to practice, particularly if there were other videos of people who had just come into his life and he wanted to get kind of a head start on speech reading them. P2 said that it was very interesting seeing the difference between her daughter speak and her husband speak, and he thought that she thought that the differences were, quite staggering. So that was different to her, and she'd never really practiced speech reading her family before. She also said that it would be interesting if you were going to some kind of event to actually load up target words. So let's say she was coming to CHI, she would add things like tangible interfaces, SIGCHI, maybe words that she hadn't seen before or hadn't even practiced speech reading. And that would really give her more confidence in going to a new event. So P3 said it was very interesting, and he liked the basic idea of it. He also echoed what P1 said, that it was different to what his training in lip reading had been, but he thought it was really quite useful. When asked what he liked, he said it was interesting that with words like parked and packed, he could actually tell the difference. So he said he got the R, which suggests he really was focusing on an analytic skill different to what was taught in classes. Okay, so what about the next steps? So our results indicate that MirrorMirror could improve participants' ability to practice when they're not in classes. However, our evaluation does not really evaluate its effectiveness in improving overall speech reading ability. So next we would like to deploy MirrorMirror in classes over a semester or a term, and it'd be really interesting to then deploy it to individuals who have hearing loss but maybe haven't actually taken speech reading classes to really see if this can, dramatically improve their practice. So in terms of extensions, we think we could extend MirrorMirror in 2 ways. So we could add a sentence practice mode to the practice tab, and this would be a little bit complicated because we'd have to somehow get people to actually record full sentences rather than individual words, which is a little bit easier to record. We then would add like a share video library feature, and then each student in one class could actually share their libraries with each other, and then they'd have a lot more videos to practice with. So it's currently built for English speech reading. However, languages such as French, German, and Japanese each have distinct viseme to phoneme mappings with the same problem, that speech sounds look similar across each lip shape. So MirrorMirror could then be adapted also by recording speakers of the target language. So we think we can actually get them to practice foreign languages by using MirrorMirror. So you could actually record a native speaker saying a particular word, and then you could actually practice learning a foreign language in this way as well. So to summarize, current speech reading acquisition tools are not adaptable to individual students. So to address the limitations, we first conducted a postal questionnaire to gather requirements, and we used our findings to design MirrorMirror. We then evaluated it using a case study and found it improved participants' ability to practice outside of classes. So thanks very much for your attention. I also have the app with me loaded onto a tablet, so after the session or during the week, if you want to have a give it a shot, just come and find me. Thank you very much.
Thanks for a good talk. We are open for questions. All right, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
So, talking about our session today, they presented a talk on how literacy affects different results, right? Especially in automated systems. Your participants rated themselves, I'm assuming that was a self-assessment.
Yeah, self-assessment, yeah.
Fair, and good.
Yeah.
How do you think that makes an impact on how they perceive your work versus someone who's truly an expert or someone who's truly a novice?
Sure. So when they were rating themselves, that was in their speech reading ability. So in terms of their literacy ability, we didn't actually assess that, but we did assess their education level. So a lot of these people were actually assessed quite highly for this demographic, which was quite surprising, but we really think that's just because of the type of people who tend to go to classes. It tends to be older people who have got a hearing loss later off in life, rather than having a hearing loss, say, from birth, or, there was some of the participants like that, but it didn't tend to be the typical norm. But that could just be in Scotland, because there are kind of different charity setups in Scotland than it might be the rest of the world. So it would be interesting to explore that in other countries as well.
Got it.
Cool.
Thanks. Question.
Daniel.
Hello.
Hello.
That's better.
Yep.
So I think it's safe to say that there was a positive impact on the participants from using the app, but I was wondering, do they have access to it after the study to continue using it?
So unfortunately they didn't have access to it, and it did feel quite upsetting to have to kind of take that that resource away from them, and in particular to actually take their videos away. So I was quite sad that we had to take the videos away from them, but that was kind of the setup of the consent as well, so we couldn't ethically allow them to keep the videos because their speakers only signed up for a particular duration of the study. So yeah, I didn't actually have time to finish it off and publish the app. I mean, it's finished, but I just haven't actually had time during finishing my PhD to actually upload it to the Play Store. But it is ready to go, so I'm hoping to try and get it up there as soon as possible, and then they can actually download and use it.
Cool.
Thanks.